Good afternoon. Chancellor, Board of Trustees members, IUPUI Board of Advisors members, faculty, staff, and students, a warm welcome to the 2014 State of the Campus Address by Chancellor Charles Bantz. As President of the IUPUI Faculty Council, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Charles Bantz, Executive Vice President of Indiana University and the fourth Chancellor of IUPUI. IUPUI is Indiana's premier public urban research university that currently serves nearly 31,000 students. Chancellor Bantz holds a bachelor's degree in English education from the University of Minnesota, a master's degree in speech communication from the University also from Minnesota, and a PhD from Ohio State University in communication, with particular focus on institutional organization. Chancellor Bantz came to IUPUI in 2003, and yesterday he announced that he will end his tenure as Chancellor in August 2015, not to leave IUPUI, but to serve it as a faculty member and as Executive Director of the Institute for Translational Research. Some of the Chancellor's impact on the campus and IUPUI's role as partner to diverse communities in greater Indianapolis were highlighted in yesterday's press release about Dr. Bantz's decision. Allow me to comment briefly on more than a decade of the Chancellor's leadership. After his arrival, when he had become familiar with the challenging complexity of IUPUI, he presented a plan that was characterized by thinking big and setting measurable goals high, showcasing the many and varied accomplishments of the campus and the impact IUPUI made. Most of the measures he set have been met, some even surpassed despite the Great Recession. In the past year, Chancellor Bantz worked closely with all members and partners of IUPUI to devise the next strategic plan, shaping the direction for the campus at times of significant change and considerable uncertainty in higher education. In so doing, he has repeated the ambitious goal setting that marked the beginning of his tenure. Only this time, it will become the responsibility of his successor to lead IUPUI's efforts to reach the markers on the road to changing the campus from being given very high marks in the category of up and coming to being recognized and highly rated as an institution where students receive an education that prepares them well for the challenges of their lives well into the 21st century, where faculty engage in scholarship that transforms and advance knowledge that is translational in its impact, and where partnering relationships between campus and community thrive in exemplary fashion. It is therefore with particular awareness of this, his last State of the Campus Address, that I present to you Chancellor Charles Bantz.
I'm about to time this, so one of the things I've learned about myself is I lose all sense of realistic time while speaking. Some of you are aware of that. This is the moment I occasionally tell the story that I used to teach from 6:40 to 9:30 at night, research methods, undergraduate. One night I realized at 9:08 I hadn't given them a break. I had actually taught straight through from 6:40 to after 9 o'clock, and I can guarantee you, you should have seen how fast they left their chairs when I gave them a break. That's not what I'm about today. I am about talking about the state of the campus, and what I want to do is put this in the context of more than a decade. And so I want to do a little bit of that was then, this is now, and as you just heard foreshadowed, what about the future, but especially I want to focus on the strategic plan and what is already underway, what has already been accomplished in the first full year of launching the new strategic plan, because I think it's key for all of us to have a sense of that progress and momentum. And now, oh good. Okay, I'm not an iPad user. All right, I always show the mission statement Some of you have heard me say this before. The mission statement at this campus essentially wrote itself. The only debate in the faculty council when this was approved was, do you capitalize S in state of Indiana? And the reason that was so easily discussed was because if you look at this mission statement and you pull out IUPUI and the phrase that follows it in commas, you cannot replace IUPUI with any other Indiana university. You can't put in Notre Dame, you can't put in Purdue West Lafayette, you can't put in Indiana University Bloomington or DePaul or anywhere else and have it make any sense. That is one of the tests of a mission statement. You can find them on the web, pull them up, and fill in different names, and it makes sense. That's not true because this mission statement reflects this campus in this city, in this state, and our unique history. And why that's so important in thinking about the last decade and the next decade is because I believe by being focused on this mission, we truly can achieve so much more. And that's why it says mission possible, not, of course, the impossible mission. In order to fulfill the promise of our campus to our community, I believe we fundamentally, of course, have to focus on excellence. President McRobbie has made very clear the principles of excellence. It's a good description of how we have to conceive of the work we need to do, and it's a good framework, and it frames the bicentennial plan. We have had doubling goals since December of 2003, and I'm going to say more about those, and some of you can give them back to me, so I'm not going to elaborate here. But I use the phrase continuous improvement, and it's a bad substitute for a sense of spirit that is here. People often ask me why I chose to leave a job I liked in Detroit. I enjoyed it a great deal. It was challenging. For all sorts of reasons. But one reason I did, and there were a couple, but one was I sensed here a desire to get better. And what I didn't sense ever here is self-satisfied people. This is not a place of people who say, we're good, we don't need to get any better. It's instead a place of people who say, we are going to do something to help our transfer students be more successful. We are going to find a way to adapt to the 21st century delivery of information to scholars when and where they need it. We are going to find a better way to treat this cancer than it's ever been treated before. And by the way, we're going to make sure the patient doesn't suffer the consequence of chemotherapy like they used to suffer it. It is that drive, and I know many of you in this room and know, frankly, how obsessed you are about making sure things get better in your school, in your discipline, in your own scholarship. And that is a key part of the promise we make here. It's part of why I think it's been a fabulous place to be and will be. Now, I asked Vernon Williams, who works with me, to say, what was it like in 2002? And bless his heart, who remembered that we discovered a planet in 2002? I sure didn't. I do remember the euro coming out because that was a huge change. All those bills that we all had carried back from France suddenly were not useful anymore. And some of us still have drawers of them. And one of the early iMacs came out. We had a Mars rover, and I remember the Roomba, the vacuum, going around the floor. And the one that's stunning is Vernon found somewhere, they claim that the detached headset came out that year. Now that's impossible to understand. How did we live without Bluetooth headsets? And yet, that's only 12 years ago. And that kind of change, that kind of past. Now you can see on our campus some things that really take it really clear. The groundbreaking for Eskenazi Hall, the home of Heron, was in 2002. The 100th anniversary of Heron, and it was their groundbreaking. Sid and Lois Eskenazi on the right there in the picture, Dean Eckmeyer in the middle, clear back. And they were still at 16th Street in a facility that, let's just say, I was so happy OSHA did not check out. And it took, that was the construction. You can see some of the other pieces, the JAM, the JAG bus. Taylor Hall still looks like it, even it had a different name back then. Some of our colleagues, I saw you, Andy. There you are. The hair is still there. Bless your heart. And some of us haven't done as well. Jerry Bepko was the chancellor. Center there you see, along with Dr. Irwin, who passed away in the last couple of years, and our students on the campus. We were an energetic place. It was a place that I came to know online and from what people said about it, because I only set foot in the airport and frankly snuck in and was at the conference center in 2002. One of my favorite quotations that, frankly, I always attributed to Robert Kennedy. Turns out, of course, it was Shaw. Everything. I have a friend who wrote a dissertation on Shaw, and he would just say all the smart things were written by Shaw. Just assume that. And this truly is one of the characteristics of this campus when we are at our best. Why not? Why not be the great model public university? Why not increase our graduation rate to twice what it was just 12 years ago? Why not raise $300 million in externally funded research? Why not raise $1 billion in a campaign for this campus? That sort of spirit has, I think, been critical to what we've done and why we are able to pursue things. We have made a lot of promises on this campus. Some of those promises go back to the 19th century. Remember that, where's Jay? There he is. PE is our oldest school, 19th century school. We've also got other schools that go back to the 19th century. Law came out of Harrison and the Indiana Law School. Medicine had some tangential relationships. We had 19th century promises, 20th century promises, and of course the creation of the campus in 1969 was certainly a great promise. I got up and made a bunch of promises on this very stage that said we were going to double degrees, we were going to double our research funding, we were going to double our engagement with our community and double our commitment to diversity. I told Harriet Ivey, the former head of the Nina Scholar, or the Nina Mason Pulliam Trust, yesterday, and thanked her. She was the person who I floated that by, and she looked at me with some skepticism. She's a very thoughtful person, and said, if you think this is what's right, do it. And I was so glad I took her advice and did this, because it has challenged us, and I think we are better because of that. So I got to show you the slides. I've been showing these slides for 10 years, and I am so glad today to say that we went up in our bachelor's degrees so that we had 1,470 more students get bachelor's degrees last year than in 2002. 1,470, up from 2212 to 3680, if I'm adding correctly. And so if you think about that kind of change is critical, changes lives. But I gotta tell you, I am worried about the slope. We have flattened. It is not going up significantly each of the last 2 years. And so we really are going to have to redouble our efforts. It's one reason transfer students are going to be so incredibly important, because they are a significant part of our population that we can increase success with. I've got a few photos of some of you literally doing teaching and work but you know what this is about in terms of bachelor's degree attainment. We have to do this to make this state more successful. Eliot is not my favorite poet, I'll confess, but this is a really good one from T.S. Eliot. Really going out far on the limb, trying things that you think people cannot imagine getting done. I think that's a great way to frame the idea of research and creative activity and scholarship, because those of you in the room know that when you're at your best, you are taking a risk. You're stepping out there. Some of you have heard me tell the story. One night, Sandra and I were fortunate to have dinner with Larry Einhorn and his wife Claudette and a large group of people, but at the table was John Cleland, and if you saw the story in the Star this year, you saw about him. John Cleland is the person who agreed to the treatment that Larry Einhorn tried first on a human being with John Cleland. And it worked at great price to John. It was extraordinarily difficult treatment. And he had, at the time I met him, taught biology in Zionsville for 27 years. Thousands of students he taught because they were willing to take a risk. And as I describe it, they jumped off a cliff. Nobody knew what was going to happen when they did that. That's what research and clinical risk is about. And we've done that. Many of you here are funded researchers. Thank you. It's been a tough time through the recession, and except for the stimulus money, which gave that nice bump back there in 2010, took us up to $400 million, 98% of the doubling goal. You know, that was one of those moments where you say, can I freeze it now? But you don't. You keep going, and we're back up again this year, slightly over last year. It's a challenge for you. But we need to do this. It's not our only metric, as we all know. Some of you do amazing work that isn't externally funded. And you know the metrics for the quality of that. This is one, and it's one we do focus on. I always like to show some of the things that have been done illustrating research. I love the motorsports car, because not just because it's a gearhead car. Heron, students and faculty were involved in the design of the body. Motorsports engineering did the car. What better image of interdisciplinary work on this campus than we've got the art students and the engineers together doing a project like that. Similarly, we have the new neuroscience building in the center there at the top that we dedicated just last month. It is a straight up bench science building. It's attached to the Goodman building, which is the IU Health Neuroscience Clinical Building, and it's a great opportunity to get an interaction between clinicians, neurosurgeons, neurologists, and some of the rehab people with our researchers. Directly below it is, of course, Sidney and Lois Eskenazi Hospital. Why is it there for research? The answer, of course, is it is a great venue for our research. It's, of course, one of our best teaching venues for medicine and the other health sciences. And our great science and engineering lab building and the beautiful glass. One of the great surprises on our campus is I tell people to walk around that building. They approach it from the library side, and they think, you know, this is nice. And then they go, it's got stained glass on it on our campus. This is a little suspiciously like art. It's a really beautiful building. And we're so glad that our colleagues, a number of you here, are doing work in that building. Engagement, civic engagement has been measured all these years by service learning classes. I don't like the fact that anything turns down like this, but oh well, it's only still 4 times what it was when we started. We are up 400% on that. In fact, more than that, 430%. We've increased in these 10 years. So we've done a great deal in this, and it is an achievement that is truly amazing. Remind yourself, we only have 30,000 students, and we get 80 600 of them taking 4-credit service learning in a single year. I say this at a national meeting and I watch people go, that can't be true. And we know this now because we've done a much better job of tracking it in the work. Our students are involved in an astonishing array of things. From on the right side, our basketball team and other athletes do service learning and civic engagement, volunteer work, and tutoring through some sustainable work that you see here that you heard some of you did. Colleen McCormick talk about food bank at Gleaners, of course. In the upper left-hand corner is our IU outreach clinic on the east side. One of the really great things our students have done, they just simply decided they wanted to do it, and they did it, and created this opportunity. Our Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, we had made a challenge to double our commitment to diversity. We created this division in the last 12 years. We have led now by Karen Dace, the Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. We've done a whole series of things, obviously, in the schools, trying to increase student success of all individuals. But we've been recognized for those efforts recently 3 times now on an award for higher education, 2 times on minority access. One of the things I love they did this year in the division is that the National Conference on Race and Ethnicity met here, and so they got 200 students coming over to learn about our campus, and so an opportunity for recruiting. We have a new leader of our Multicultural Success Center, Multicultural Center, Khalila Shabazz, who also finished her doctorate this year. DEI, that is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office is called, has been supporting our students. And the reason this slide I love is because they're supporting things the students invented. We didn't invent Cesar Chavez dinner. It was the Latino students who did that. The African students invented their Changing the Story, their annual African night. Our LGBT students and faculty have pulled together and been involved in a variety, including a milk dinner, which was very successful again. And the Asian students are involved in a dinner. All of this has been supported by DEI in trying to support diversity of our students. As I think about how we got to this point where we are now, obviously a lot of it was having a strategy for the future. And so I'm very pleased that Executive Vice Chancellor Nasser Paydar took the lead in the strategic planning. It involved hundreds of you across the campus in dozens of meetings, and still, by the way, is involving many of you in those meetings, and I want to thank you for doing that. It set 3 clear sets of priorities in terms of our initiatives: success of students, of course, health and life science, and in addition, the well-being of our citizens, not only here, but across the world. We always continue to connect to our economic clusters. This, I believe, is one of the secrets of the success going forward, because one of the differences between the planning today and 10 years ago is the increased concern about the success of students after they graduate. We are now expected to be responsible for whether our students are successful after they graduate. For some of you, this is not news. Some of you are in disciplines where you've always saw yourself as focusing on that. I often use the example of engineers in programs always sort of believe that they're supposed to reverse engineer the design of the program to fit the market that's out there. It's not all they do, but it's got to be a part of that. Those of you who are in professional programs for practice know that you have to train people for that. And these clusters have been important to us. And frankly, as illustrated, our investment in the Lilly Family School was related to an economic cluster, as well as, of course, the great lead we had in the Center on Philanthropy. I'm going to go through the 10 initiatives that are in the plan to remind some of you what they are, but also to tell you specifically of some things that have happened in the last year in each of these areas. So beginning first with student success, this graphic here was created by Vernon Williams for a presentation I needed to do at a conference just last month in some city in Florida, Orlando. I was in Orlando. And It describes the effort that's being done in University College and across the campus to target first-year students who are low-income students and try and help them be successful. And I hope you all know why it's so important to focus on low-income students. In my mail today is what I consider to be in higher education the most depressing chart I see every year. And it comes from a guy named Mortensen, who's a data wonk in Iowa, in a little town you have never heard of, who every year he does these data things. Well, this month it is the probability that you will have a bachelor's degree by age 25 based on your family's income. And if you were in the top quartile of income in America, the probability in this year's sample is 77.2%. And the top quartile, as I remember, is 112,000, all right? So 77% probability. If you are in the bottom quartile, your probability is 9.1%. 8 times. Wealthy families, children have an 8 times probability of a low-income student. Now the bad news is, that's the really bad news. The bad news is the third quartile is 34%, half, less than half of the top quartile. So in America, one of our challenges is we've increased access, but we have not increased success across the income spectrum. So this chart, the secret of this chart is in the right-hand corner. 21st century scholars are low-income students from Indiana who make a commitment in middle school to keep straight and earn grades, and then they get support for college. They come to IUPUI at a high rate. They do not graduate at a high rate. And so what we're going to focus on in this chart, if you can see the detail, is to systematically integrate a whole series of supports and strategies that are developmentally tied to the age of the student and their ability to do it. To get them in thematic learning communities where there's service learning, where there's a focus, get them engaged with mentors, get them to begin to think about careers and major planning from the very beginning, and then carry this through their education. If we can succeed in increasing their success, we are helping students who have financial support but are not succeeding at the level we need in this state and in this country. This is, I think, one of the key efforts that we've got to make in the next decade. In terms of the second initiative, it's graduate education, increasing capacity, and this is one of the areas where we have a paradoxical circumstance in our graduate education. Compared to our peer universities, we graduate twice as many, nearly twice as many, professional doctorates. Big surprise. We have the country's largest entering class in medical school, 355. We have a huge program in dentistry and law, all graduate professional. We have some smaller graduate professional programs that are doctorates in a few other professions. So we do quite well on that. We do well in master's programs. We're roughly about what our peers are. On the other hand, we had graduated last year, as Dr. Padar reminds me, 35 PhDs. Our peers averaged 236 PhDs. Now, you've been working on this, so I'm not beating you up for that, because we have added 10 PhDs since I've been here. But we've got to grow this and grow the throughput. And you don't do that by taking poor students. You do that by recruiting great students and supporting them and helping them finish in a timely fashion. And so that strategy is going to be one that I believe we're going to live with. And I say it we because that's one of my responsibilities. This is something I feel a huge responsibility to try and carry as a faculty member. What we've done in this year alone, though, is add a professional doctoral degree. This is the occupational therapy doctorate. We've added new certificates, we've added new tracks, we've added dual degrees, all of which do increase capacity. So that's really important, but those of you who have doctoral programs that are new, PhDs in particular, please, please work on increasing productivity. Online education is, of course, an opportunity. One of the things that has been fun here at IUPUI is realizing how far you were ahead when I got here of the country. Kelly Direct was underway in my first year here, getting started. And frankly, it's a perfect example of the IUPUI way, which is, oh, you need to teach 10-week courses and we have 15-week semesters? We'll find a way to get it done. So we had jerry-rigged the entire system. I didn't used to say this in speeches, but we had jerry-rigged the entire system about how to keep track of grades. The registrar, bless the registrar's heart, bless those of you who scheduled and figured out how to do it, and how people got it online, and it made it successful as a world leader in terms of developing that program. We had other programs as well. People came to me and said, we're going to do a PhD in nursing, and it's going to be predominantly online. I'm a card-carrying PhD, and I suffered with classes and comprehensives and all the things that you do. And I went to Ohio State. It was traditional, all of these things. And I'm looking at them saying, explain to me how I'm going to present this to a board and the Academic Leadership Council. How do you do that? And they explained to summer residency that you do this online, that nurses are self-directed people, that they don't need clinical training. They got clinical training. They're nurse practitioners. They're advanced practice people. They don't need that. Here's what we're going to do. And guess what? It's working. This is a faculty who was willing to try that. Similarly, my colleagues in communication, that course, R110, that's public speaking, people. This is the bane of a department chair's existence in communication. 25 people, you can't scale it up. You need all these people to teach it. You got to teach thousands of people this course. I mean, this was the nightmare when I was a department chair, and they're trying online delivery. That kind of continuous improvement, willingness to take a risk, is the characteristic. And look at the other example. We're putting language learning online. Bless your hearts. That kind of innovation, all of this is in the last year. This is what we've got here, and I want to encourage you to keep doing it, obviously with quality, obviously measured, obviously continuously trying to improve it. Imagination is, I like this quotation here because this is one of the things I thought of when I thought about all the distance ed online learning people have done. Who would have thought to approach public speaking online? Who would have thought of doing a PhD online? Well, turns out I've got colleagues and you've got colleagues who did that. That's the kind of imagination that doesn't just depend on your knowledge of something, it depends on seeing a way to do something in the future. I would also argue it takes some imagination to think about enrollment management because we are constantly in this struggle of the change in demographics and the change of IV tech, and you can go on and on. And so, for example, one of the secrets of the last 15 years in this campus that I'm going to find some way to say in writing is this is a campus that handed off, I believe it's fair to say, tens of thousands of potential students to Ivy Tech. Beginning in the year 2000, we began referring students to Ivy Tech, and I'm looking around the room and looking for the number. Do you know the number that we've referred in the last, say, 5 years? Approximately 5,000. 5,000. I exaggerated. About 10,000 students in the last 10 years we have given up as customers, as tuition-paying students. And yet we've grown our credit hours every fall during that time period. We set records several times for total enrollment. We've changed our business model while we were flying it. And the way we've done that is some pretty good imagination in enrollment management. But what we've been doing, led by Nasser Paydar, is trying to get some more organization wrapped around this. And so Becky Porter has reorganized enrollment management and created the division. We've combined a bunch of our student success efforts. We're trying to actually be more effective in this area. And all of this, save three, has been happening in the last year. We've been pretty data-driven in the past. We're just taking it up as the engineers in charge. In strengths of health and life science, some great things this year. One of the really scary problems in America is concussions. This is actually one of those things that people had not paid enough attention to. The NCAA, when I was on the board, did one of the first studies that they'd done on this and really began to get concerned. So this would go back to about 2009, maybe. And now there's been an investment by the Department of Defense, the NCAA, $30 million grant, and our School of Medicine, our psychiatry department, is the lead on this. It's not the only institution involved, but it's a lead. This is a key move, I think, in health and life science. It builds on some expertise we have, both faculty and equipment. The music therapy program by two of our colleagues is a genius idea of trying to connect music therapy to a specific type of cancer, and obviously with children, really important. Interprofessional education we've been talking about and believe it's important, and we've hired now a leader in that area to try and move that forward. Again, all of this is just the last year, and as you can imagine, this is an area where I could have pulled out a lot more examples. In terms of research, innovation and discovery, Vice Chancellor Cody Varamian has pulled together a new strategic plan. It's got a major grand challenge about urban health and well-being that's going to be a key part of it. But one of the other things that he's been doing that has been very effective is bringing people to campus from the federal funding agencies, individuals from NSF and so forth. NASA is a place we get close to vanishing amounts of money from. You should know there is an astonishing amount of NASA research funding available. We're not there. And it was great to bring someone. The Institute for the IUPUI Arts and Humanities Institute engaged in lots of good work. Another program you can see there for underrepresented minority students in STEM. The Trailblazer Award winners. It's been a great celebration of our colleagues in the research area. And again, this is this year. This is what's going on now and moving that plan forward. Our commitment to community engagement, we all know we have a commitment. It's getting deeper and broader. I've loved that we see some of that as international. So we had students in Swaziland doing health work in recent times, and we've seen all the kinds of outreach that is there. Lots of work being done and will continue to be in what is, you should know, a very complicated environment. Especially international, but as it turns out, sometimes even in our own neighborhood, this is a complicated place to work. Again, one of those quotations that I think captures it. When we're at our best, we really do look for opportunities. You know, we looked at the recession as a university. I'm not claiming this is the campus, and we were fortunate to have a president who, instead of saying, "Oh, don't hire anybody," he said, "What a deal. We're going to be able to get really talented people through this recession. And because you, the deans, managed your money well, you were able to hire." Above our heads, I would say, in some markets. We've had some great hires during that period. And it's a good example of this. Internationalization, we have terrific leadership with Gil Latz and the team over there. Heron is a longtime school that has invested. You should know how they do this is if you know Valerie, you know that she assiduously asks her donors to support this. They have a Fraser Travel Fund. They pursue support, and they had 28 students on that trip last summer. What a great opportunity for them. I mentioned some of our students going abroad. 2 nursing practice students were in Liberia. I had that moment when I read this and said, exactly when were they in Liberia? and it was more than 21 days ago, so I think we're okay. The Lilly Family School has a series of relationships. One of the more recent ones has been signed with Beijing Normal, I want to say just in the last 2 months, if I'm remembering correctly from Gene's travel plans. But this has been a good example of where we've been involved just again in the last year. Promoting our campus climate in terms of inclusiveness, we have huge opportunities here. Nursing got a funding from Robert Wood Johnson to get underrepresented students in the nursing program. Academic Affairs has got the START program, which is the reconstruction of what was Schruff, but this is targeted for talent and trying to. And I want to thank here and publicly those of you who've helped make those hires work, because they are almost always complicated. They do require you for investing your resources as well as the campus. And as these things go these days, almost all of them appear to be dual career hires. So we have put together any number of these diversity hires where we're hiring 2 individuals, and we have done almost every creative thing possible, including hiring people on other campuses to make this work. And I want to thank you for that. It simply would not happen without that kind of commitment. And it demonstrates that inclusiveness. One area that is the foundation is, of course, supporting our faculty and staff development. As you can see, we support our faculty a great deal in terms of teaching and research and service. The Office of Women, we have the effort in service with distinction that Vice Chancellor Rhodes initiated, and we do a great deal. We do provide fee courtesy, and I encourage you to support your staff who utilize that, because that's an exceedingly important part of what we do. In this area, looking forward on the plan, we're going to keep talking about this. It'll be a centerpiece of the report to the community in February. We've redesigned the performance report, so it's going to be laid out matching the 10 initiatives and presenting those metrics. And of course, we'll continue to look at it and review it as we go on. I hope all of you saw this photo somewhere. I am looking forward to seeing the piece of art in place. I wasn't one. This is Professor Anelia Kwayom-Aga, who is our Heron faculty member. And if you didn't read about her, you need to know this is the most successful artist of the year, maybe in the world, probably, because she not only won the public's vote at the prize for the art prize in Grand Rapids, Michigan, she tied for the experts and won $300,000 prize. And she's an artist, remember? This is an amazing piece of art in brilliant design. It's both technically sophisticated, it's a cutout with a particular kind of design, and it's supposedly lit entirely with 1 light bulb in the center, and it creates that whole room space lit around it. What an imagination. And what's interesting is the people who find this intriguing are both in the sciences and in history and in religion and in the arts, because this was a takeoff of Spain, and Moorish Spain in particular, and the images that they have. And what a great celebration of imagination and of talent on our campus. I'm done. I'm not following that. Thank you very much. Troy Brown did that for us on the fly, asking, after we asked him to do one that emphasized this campus. And those of you who know Troy's work, you recognize it. He caught it. So thank you very much.